Denver, Colorado's Native Daughters recently returned from a 5-year hiatus and are gearing up to release a new EP titled Ultimo Capo. I recently spoke with guitarist Justin Hackl about this new release, what it's like being a part of the music scene in Denver, and the important role that artwork plays in building an instrumental band's aesthetic.
It's been a pretty interesting 5 years between that last release. So our guitar player who quit the band a couple years ago was doing some traveling and trying to do some soul searching. You know, it was about a girl and things of that nature. And then as that was happening at the same time, our drummer, well, we have two drummers. So one of our drummers was kind of going through the same thing with his wife and two kids, where he's like, I don't know what to do, So he decided to sell his house and buy a trailer and a van, a big van, and just travel the country with his family. And so all of us were kind of like stuck in limbo, like, well, what do we do? Because we don't even know where you're going to be. He went on this soul searching trip, and our other guitar player was kind of, losing his mind, as it would seem too. So, I mean, we never broke up. I said, we'll play shows when we can. And that's kind of what we did. The other drummer and I started another band called Future Perfect, and we recorded like one album, and, we put very minimal into it. It was definitely a side project, and the songs were fun, and we played a few shows and hung out with some dudes we really liked hanging out with, and it was cool. But once Colin, the guy who went on that little soul searching trip, came back, we decided to find another guitar player and started back up again. That was about a year ago. Everything's been kind of crazy for everybody. I think for me personally, I think I've handled it better than most people. Everyone's like, I miss shows, I miss this. I'm like, man, this break has been pretty rad from everything. I've played music for so long that not having any commitments for a full year has been pretty awesome.
Upon their return, the band got to work on a new EP, fleshing out songs that showcased their unique live show.
Play live, there's two full drum sets up front, kind of like what a lead singer would do, but instead of a lead singer, we have two drummers.
That makes sense. Listening to those recordings, like the drums are really powerful. So that's cool.
They're the forefront. Yeah, when people, because I was lucky to join the band about a year after they started. So I've known the guys forever, and so seeing them play was always fun. And I always said that to people. I'm like, even if you're not necessarily into heavier music or whatever it is we're doing, you will always have fun watching it live. Always. I don't care what you're into, because I have the best seat in the house because I'm right behind them. It's very unique setup because there's a wall of amps behind us, and then the drums are in front of us. So I get to watch those two do what they do all the time, and it's super fun. Our bass player Gene is always right between the both of them, and the dynamic too is Tom is more of the rhythm keeper. He may do some pretty creative beats, but he's usually not as busy as Colin. Colin's usually the one that's doing a little more busy with things.
Okay.
So that's always like when our new guitar player joined last year, that was kind of the thing. It's like, if you ever get lost, look at Tom.
As we dug deeper into the EP, Justin explained to me the genesis of each of the 3 tracks.
one of them has been around since the last album. So like that, the last album came out 5 years ago. One of those songs is probably close to 5 years old. We've had it forever. And then the other two, we just wrote with our new guitar player. So, I mean, you've been in bands, you understand. As soon as you get a new member or you got a new project, like the ideas just start flowing out immediately. And so we wrote those two songs with him. And right before the pandemic hit, we opened up for Snapcase, which was like a dream come true to me because I grew up loving that band.
Yeah.
So we opened up for them, and then like 3 weeks later, the pandemic hit. And it was like, now what? And so I ended up starting to record solo stuff and started to do a lot of demos and things of that nature. And the guy we did our last record with, Dave Otero, I called him and I said, hey, look, I got decent recording gear. I mean, it's still, lower level stuff, but, would you feel about recording all of our drums? And not only recording our drums, but recording them at the same time, which we've never done before until this EP. And then I said, but I'll do everything else. All the keyboards, all the sound effects, bass, guitars, everything will be done at my house. And that's exactly what we did. We just got the test pressings for these records last week, and I'm so pumped on it. Yeah, the test pressings look great. It's a one-sided 12-inch. So the side B has like this rad etching that matches the artwork. And then all three songs are on the one side of the record. And it worked out perfectly.
As we got onto the topic of artwork, Justin talked about the importance of working with an artist who could help the band bring their vision to life.
So the guy who did it, he is in a, I don't even know what to call him, Budos band. Are you familiar with them at all?
Yeah.
He's done some shirts for us. We actually did a couple shows with them, which I love playing with Budos band, by the way, because having like a heavier instrumental band playing with like a more funk oriented instrumental band is so fun because, oh my God, they're just, not only are they like the best, nicest dudes in the world, they're like us. They just don't care. They're just up there to have a great time. And Budos band is like something they get to do for fun and go on the road for a couple of weeks, and they do well. And but Brian is a phenomenal artist. I don't know his Instagram handle off the top of my head, but if you can find it, I'm going to look it up right now. But he just does stuff similar to what we're into. We tend to have a very much a fantasy or very kind of bloody or kind of creepy aesthetic for our artwork. And we had a couple other ideas come to the forward. A buddy of mine did one that was like, I called him up and I was like, hey man, watch Conan, like all three Conan movies, and then just draw something for our cover. And and it was, what he came up with was amazing. I loved it. It was this giant monster that was about to smash this little knight with his fist. And it was so 80s and silly and over the top. And no one else in my band liked it. They're like, no, that's too much. And I'm like, come on. So that was the artwork was like delayed. I'm not kidding you. Us fighting over the artwork delayed this release by like 3 or 4 months. And originally Brian was going to do it. I just found it. Brian Profilio is his name, and it's bprofilio.art is his Instagram, but definitely check him out. But so Brian was originally going to do the artwork anyway. And then one of our drummers, tattoo artists, wanted to do it. He came up with this idea for like a conch and it just looked like a giant seashell. And I was like, it looks cool, but that completely is like, it just doesn't fit with what we've done. Like, our first album, War Elephant, had a giant elephant with blood all over the place. Our second record was done with Paul Romano, who did like all the early Mastodon records. And it's this giant snake with this topless woman with no face, and it was creepy and weird, and we loved it. So Brian just got it instantly. So he just nailed it, because with instrumental music you almost have to have something that makes you stand out.
Since I had the opportunity to check in with a band from outside the Midwest, I asked Justin to fill me in on the state of the music scene in Denver, and while doing so, he shared with me a story about the time Native Daughters played the famous Red Rocks amphitheater.
Denver in general is I mean, and obviously in the suburbs, there's been people who just don't give it, who's been playing shows anyway, and that to me, that's a bummer to me. But yeah, I mean, there's always going to be people who don't think science is real and whatever. That's a whole nother subject. But you know, I wasn't comfortable because of all the health stuff I deal with on a pretty regular basis. I mean, I'm fine now, but over the last 6-7 years, I've had multiple surgeries on multiple different things, so I was in no hurry to play shows. Plus, kind of like what I said earlier, I don't. This break's been pretty awesome. I'm in no hurry. I've been playing shows since the mid '90s, so having this break was pretty cool. But yeah, shows are starting to happen again for sure. The music scene, as far as I can tell, now granted, I am one of the older guys these days, but definitely like on the heavier side of things, whether it's metal or just like I said, just heavier side of things. It's crazy how many good bands are coming out of here right now, and that are getting recognized and are getting picked up by bigger labels. Because again, growing up here my whole life, maybe 1-2 bands every 5-10 years would get on some kind of independent label that had some kind of clout or some kind of help that they could get them to the next level. But it seems like every 3 or 4 months, some band from Denver is getting picked up by some bigger independent label or even bigger labels, and it's awesome. It's so cool, and the vibe here in general, which is probably why I still live here, at least for this scene, is very much just like hey, it's just what we do, and if people want to come along and be a part of it, that's great. There's not this rock star attitude that comes with success. Especially which can happen very easily in like a heavier scene. I've noticed, or anything of metal, it seems to be very competitive sometimes. Again, because growing up in the punk scene, it was very much the opposite. Obviously you're a sellout if you even try to be popular. So, there's that whole fine line of what do I do to, be happy and quote unquote successful versus not trying to like out show up everybody. And thankfully there is none of that there. And obviously I'm not necessarily the one to speak for that whole scene in general, because I tend to only go out when I have to. Like I love if there's a show that's coming up and there's bands that I'm buddies with and I want to go, then absolutely.
Now I think I saw a while back that you guys played Red Rocks. Is that correct?
We did. Yeah, we did.
What is that like, man? That's gotta be,
I mean, it was cool just because, I used to go on field trips there when I was a kid, growing up here. That was like, oh, we're going to Red Rocks today. Oh, cool. So to actually play that stage was cool. What was not cool about our specific experience is that the way we got to play it is they do a thing every year called Film on the Rocks, where a band or two gets to play and then they show a movie on the gigantic big screen through the Red Rock sound system. And it's great. I saw a few Star Wars movies there before. I saw The Sandlot there once. It's really fun. But after years, it's probably 3 or 4 years of consistently bugging them to let us play, because again, most of the bands that end up playing are mostly indie rock or pretty mellow, and I get it because it's a family friendly environment, and fine, I get all that. But we might be a heavier band or metal band or whatever you want to call us, but we don't have screaming vocals, and we're not offensive in any shape, way, or form. So after years of convincing them to play, we're like, yes, we got it, we're so excited. And then about a month later, we find out the movie that we're playing before is The Fast and the Furious. I was so bummed, because not only is that show not going to do very well, which I was correct. Yeah, it was a bummer, but we actually we made light of it. We made like posters with Vin Diesel without a shirt on that says Native Daughters, Red Rocks with the date on it. And, it was really hot that day, and sound check was like at 3 in the afternoon where the sun's just like beaming down on you. And I think I forgot my power cable, so I felt like a complete idiot. Because I'm like, oh, do you have a power cable I could use? Like, here I am at Red Rocks, like one of the biggest, nationally best sounding, coolest venues in the world. And I'm like, I didn't bring my power cable. So the whole day was just kind of weird. And then when we actually played, the place was like half empty, which was still like three or 4,000 people, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But 3,000 or 4,000 people in a 9,000 venue still looks pretty weird.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when they're certainly not there to see you. They're there to watch the Fast and the Furious.
As things start to once again open up, both in Denver and across the country, I asked Justin what the band's plans were for the future once they release their EP and they can once again start playing shows. Here's what Justin had to say.
I don't have the mental capacity to get on the road unless I know that we're like opening for a band that has a little bit of a draw. Even if it's like 50 people a night, that's enough for me to be like, okay, cool. Like we know there'll be some people every night. That would be worth it to me, to invest in a van and a trailer and all that other stuff that goes along with it and merch and all that other stuff. I've done it so many times that it's really hard for me to put my life on hold for a project that I do love, but it's very much a let's see how good of songs we can write project. And when shows come back, let's see if we can get on any good shows and go from there. Because when we end up playing locally, we're almost always the headliner, which is flattering, but it's also pain in the ass because then you're not getting home till 2 or 3 in the morning sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I think most of that's because A, we draw okay, but B, because the 2 drums again, like no one wants to deal with the 2 drum thing in the middle of a set, and I get that. I apologize to every sound person I've ever met if they've never worked with us instantly. I'm like, I'm sorry, we have 2 drummers. it's gonna suck. So, but they all, by the end of the night, it's always it all works out well. So back to your question, I think we would if some band or some booking agent or something that could give us a little bit of more, not necessarily security, but confidence that we'll come home and not completely lose our ass. Like I expect us to lose money. That's fine, but if I'm losing money, at least I know people are going to see us.
Yeah.
There's got to be some kind of trade-off there. I've done the play in front of the sound guy tour too many times.
Yeah.
And it's great when you're in your 20s because you just don't care. That was the thing. It's like I'd always tell myself, a bad day on tour is still better than a good day at work.
Right.
And that's how I felt in my 20s because I hated my job back then. I don't necessarily love my job now. It's I get to work on guitars all day. So that statement wouldn't hold up now. A good day at work is a rad day at work for me. So it's hard for me to have that attitude. And let's be real. Touring is a young man's game, and anyone else who says differently is out of their mind. Like it is. To be able to have that kind of patience and ability to adapt to a new city and new town that on the fly, especially if you're an unknown band that nobody knows about, that takes a special kind of commitment in the first place.
Yeah.
And at one point in my life I had it, and it was great. It was fun. I don't miss it much. Yeah, I really don't. I kind of got it out of my system. But we do talk about it, and I know some of the guys in my band really do want to push forward like that. They want to we should get on this tour. We should send our stuff to this guy. And our bass player is very connected with a lot of big names, and he's always like, I could get us on this tour. And I'm like, well, if it happens, let me know, man. Like if it feels like it could be something where we get to play in front of people, great. I'm in. Let's do it. We're kind of the old guys now, so we got to be kind of picky about what we do and understand that there's a whole new generation of people that want to be doing exactly what we've been doing. So
yeah.
And that's all good too. Like, whatever. Again, I've been so lucky to do what I've done for so long that this is just kind of the cherry on top for me. Again, I know how spoiled I am. I know how lucky I am to be where I am.